Hey, Rick McBride here with your Property Masters in 5 minutes of free time. And continue on, we're on section 14 of the contract, not actually section 14, but our part 14 of the contract, the as-is residential contract for sale and purchase, put out by the Florida Realtors and approved by the Florida Bar. We are in the standards for real estate transactions, so we are into the legalese, but it is important when it is important, basically. Most of the time, not an issue, but when it is an issue, it is an issue. The escrow closing procedure is section J. Basically, it says that all closing proceeds will be held in escrow by the closing agent.
Go, keep talking.
By the closing agent, and that if the seller's title is rendered unmarketable through no fault of the buyer within the 10-day period, they can notify the seller of the defect, and the seller has 30 days to fix that defect. And after 5 days after written demand, be refunded to the buyer and conveyed to the seller by special warranty deed a bill of sale. If the seller fails to timely cure the defect, the deposit and all the funds will be refunded to the buyer. If the buyer fails to make a timely demand, the buyer shall take title as is. So if this basically says that there's no title insurance. You should always get title insurance, but sometimes you pay cash and you don't, but that's not very good practice. Prorations and credits. Prorations are like your taxes are paid in arrears, so the seller will owe the buyer some taxes. If you close in June, they would owe through June for their taxes. So this basically says that all things will be prorated. If occupancy occurs as of the date of the closing date, the buyer typically owns the closing date. Unless it's your loan prorating, and your loan, they prorate the buyer and the seller to closing dates. But anything that the buyer and seller share, they prorate to the closing date, and the buyer owns that closing date. This includes things like taxes and stuff like that. You then have access to the section L. Says that the seller will provide the buyer access to the property to conduct appraisals, inspections, and walkthroughs, so they can't keep you out if you want to inspect it. And risk of loss until the day of closing will be the responsibility of the seller. 1031 exchange. If you are transferring from a like-kind property to a like-kind property as an investor, this basically says that they will file with the IRS and let them know that you're doing that. Contract is not recordable. So the deed is recordable, the mortgage is recordable, and the mortgage note is recordable, the promissory note. But this contract is not recordable. Neither this contract nor any notice of it shall be recorded in any public records. This contract shall be binding on and ensure the benefit of the parties, so it is binding. And whatever the context permits, singular shall include plural, and one gender shall include all. So it says her, they mean both of you. Notice and delivery given to or by an attorney representing any party shall be effective, and all notices must be in writing and may be made by mail, personal delivery, or electronic media. A facsimile or electronic copy of this contract shall be legal and applicable. So we can fax, we can email, and that is fine. Electronic is fine. The contract finally caught up with the 1990s. Integration and modification. The contract contains full and complete understanding of the buyer and seller. Waiver. Failure of the buyer and seller to insist on a compliance or strict performance or any provision of this contract or take advantage of any rights shall not automatically constitute a waiver. So if you don't give them notice that that they didn't make their payment, their deposit, whatever, any part, they didn't do the inspection, that is not necessarily an automatic waiver of that provision. And actually all the provisions that we reviewed before had time frames on them, and if you didn't meet the time frame, what then happened, and each one of them is a little different. Riders addenda typewritten or handwritten provisions shall control all printed provisions within this contract. So anything that's written after this contract and signed by both parties overrides this contract. Collection or collected items means any check tendered or any items tendered. You don't necessarily have to pay with a check. You can pay with a diamond. But anything collected and is held in the closing agent's account. Section T is reserved for later. Section U is applicable law and venue. The contract shall be in the laws of Florida, and the venue for disputes shall lie in the county where the real property is located. So if you're in Jacksonville and you're buying a property in Volusia County, it will be in Volusia County where the court would take place. The FIRPTA holding tax is if you are a foreign person as defined by FIRPTA. The title company will withhold up to 15% of the amount recognized by the seller for taxes. Because foreign people have a problem. We have a problem collecting taxes from them, so we'll withhold 15% if you're not a U.S. citizen. And then buyer waive of claims to the extent permitted by law. The buyer waives any claims against the seller and any real estate licensee involved in the negotiation of this contract for any damages or defects pertaining to the physical condition of the property that may exist at closing and be subsequently discovered by the buyer or anyone claiming. So what this says is, if you find something wrong and it wasn't intentionally hidden, that's very key. It was not intentionally hidden later on, then you waive your right basically for any damages against that, unless you can prove that it was intentionally hidden against the agent and as well as the seller. Section 19 identifies A through double B addendums that can go along with this contract, and you just check the box for that addendum. Later we'll go over the addendums. And then section 20 is additional terms, where you can write in whatever additional terms you need to put in there. Then the last page is the signature page. Of course, we have to initial every page that has a signature on it. That wraps up the contract. I'm going to put a blog post up in the next week or so that has a link to all sections of the contract. If you have any questions about the contract, I went over it pretty quickly. Give us a call, shoot us a text. You want to enter into a contract. Now's a really good time to do it if you're a seller. 386-866-1007. It's also a good time as a buyer because prices are still hitting up, especially in the upper price ranges where they haven't gone up nearly as much as the lower price ranges. Again, 386-866-1007. Our Master's Marketing Program will get you top dollar.